Chapter 1. The Shattered Soul. The scent of dried silver leaf and crushed sundalia filled Alara's small apothecary, a fragrant shroud against the city's evening damp. It was the smell of her quiet, carefully constructed peace. For 5 years, this shop had been her sanctuary, a fortress built of mortar, pestle, and the mundane rhythm of a life she'd fought to claim. She ran a soft cloth over the polished oak counter, her movements slow and deliberate. Her gaze fell upon the object resting in a small velvet-lined alcove behind the counter, the jade soul stone. It wasn't large, no bigger than her palm, but it was the heaviest thing in the world. Its surface was a perfect milky green, and deep within its core, a soft, warm light pulsed in time with the heartbeat only she could feel. "Another day, Liam," she whispered, her voice a low murmur that barely disturbed the dust motes dancing in the final shaft of twilight. "The widow Gremley's boy has the lung rot again." And young Fen tried to pay for a poultice with a painted rock. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You would have found that funny." The stone pulsed, a gentle wave of warmth washing over her skin, a phantom echo of her late husband's embrace. It was his essence, his soul, lovingly preserved in the jade matrix she had grafted herself. The stone was more than a memento. It was her anchor, it was a seal. It kept the storm within her caged, grounding the raging, godlike power that slept fitfully beneath her skin. The faint green, vein-like scars that covered her arms and back were a constant reminder of what that power cost and what the soul stone held at bay. The bell above the door should have chimed. It didn't. Instead, the solid oak door splintered inwards, torn from its iron hinges with a single, brutal kick. Alara's head snapped up. Her peaceful facade hardened into a mask of cold appraisal. Two figures filled the ruined doorway, their forms bulky and indistinct beneath heavy, tattered cloaks. They moved with a predator's silence, their boots making no sound on the herb-strewn floorboards. Sickly purple runes, etched onto obsidian bracers, glowed with a corrupt light in the dimming shop. Her hand drifted below the counter, fingers closing around a heavy ceramic pestle. Her mind, a weapon she hadn't sharpened in years, raced through calculations. They weren't common thugs. They moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the shop and dismissing the jars of expensive reagents, the neatly stacked coin in the till. "The coin is on the counter," Alara said, her voice flat and devoid of fear. "Take it and leave." The taller of the two chuckled, a sound like grinding stones. "We're not here for coin, apothecary." He took a step forward, and the air grew cold, carrying the stench of decay and dark magic. His gaze locked onto the glowing soul stone in its alcove. "We're here for that." A cold dread, sharp and familiar, pierced the shell of Alara's composure. This wasn't a robbery. This was a violation. "You don't want that," she said, her voice dropping an octave, a low warning that would have sent any sane criminal running for the nearest city gate. The second man, shorter but broader, lunged. Alara reacted instantly. The apothecary, the grieving widow, vanished. In her place was a flicker of something older, faster. She sidestepped, bringing the heavy pestle up in a vicious arc aimed at his temple. But he was unnaturally fast, catching her wrist in a grip of iron. The runes on his bracer flared, and a wave of nauseating, corrosive energy surged up her arm, making her cry out in pain. While she was engaged, the leader moved towards the counter, his eyes fixed on the soulstone. "No." The word was torn from her throat, a raw sound of pure desperation. With a surge of strength born from panic, Alara slammed her heel into her captor's knee. The joint buckles with a wet crunch, but he barely flinched, his grip tightening. She was strong, her body toned from years of discipline, but these men were alchemically enhanced, their flesh unnaturally resilient. She had to end this now, before he reached the stone. Her free hand darted into a pouch at her belt, fingers finding a small, paper-wrapped packet. With a flick of her wrist, a cloud of fine gray powder burst into the air between them. Grim-wort pollen, concentrated, enough to put a giant to sleep for a week. The thug holding her inhaled sharply, but instead of collapsing, he just coughed, a dry, rattling sound. The purple runes on his armor glowed brighter, burning the pollen from the air before it could take full effect. A cold certainty settled in Alara's gut. They had come prepared, they knew. The leader was at the counter now. He didn't reach for the soul stone. He simply looked at it, a cruel smile twisting his lips beneath his hood. Then, he unhooked a heavy obsidian-headed mace from his belt. Time seemed to slow. Every detail became painfully sharp. The way the lamplight glinted off the mace's polished surface. The last frantic pulse of warmth from the soulstone, a silent, desperate cry. The phantom feeling of Liam's hand in hers fading into nothing. Liam! The name was a choked sob. She roared, a sound of pure animalistic fury, and threw her entire body against the man holding her. She drove him back a step, two, but it wasn't enough. The leader raised the mace. "The veil sends its regards," he grunted. The mace came down. The sound was not a sound. It was a schism in reality, a silent shriek that tore through Alara's very soul. The beautiful jade stone didn't just break. It exploded into a billion motes of emerald dust. The soft, warm light within, Liam's essence, winked out of existence like a dying star. For a single, horrifying heartbeat, there was only silence and a profound, absolute emptiness. The anchor was gone. The seal was shattered. The phantom warmth that had been a constant presence against her skin for 5 years was replaced by a raging Arctic void. And into that void, the storm rushed in. The green, vein-like scars all over her body, dormant for years, erupted with blinding emerald light. The air in the shop crackled, ionized, thick with a pressure that bent light and warped sound. The jars on the shelves began to vibrate, then cracked, then exploded outwards. The thug holding Alara looked down at her, his eyes wide with a sudden dawning terror. Her eyes were no longer the color of a forest floor. They were twin supernovas of raw, annihilating power. What have you done?" he stammered, his enhanced strength forgotten as he tried to pull away. Alara didn't answer. She couldn't. The apothecary was gone, submerged beneath a tsunami of unleashed power. A scream of raw creation and annihilation, locked away for half a decade, was tearing its way up her throat. The energy erupted from her. It wasn't a blast. It was a wave of pure physical force made manifest. The thug holding her was turned instantly to a shimmering, green-veined crystal, his face locked in a rictus of terror. A moment later, the crystal statue shattered into 1,000 glittering shards. The leader had time to turn to witness the unmaking of his companion. His arrogance dissolved into primal fear. He raised his mace, a futile gesture against a hurricane. Lara didn't even look at him. A gesture, no more than a twitch of her fingers, sent a spike of solid, razor-sharp jade erupting from the floorboards, impaling him and lifting him into the air before he too was encased and shattered into dust. The power kept pouring out, a torrent with no dam. The walls of her shop groaned, splintering and cracking. The roof was torn away, revealing the stunned, night-dark sky. She stood in the epicenter of a swirling vortex of emerald energy. Loose floorboards, shattered glass and dried herbs orbiting her like a personal planetary system. The grief was still there, a black hole in her chest where Liam used to be. But now it was fuel, fanning the flames of an ancient, terrible rage. The quiet apothecary was dead, shattered along with the soulstone. In the ruins of her sanctuary, glowing like a wrathful god, the emerald destroyer was awake, and she was utterly, terrifyingly out of control.